Hi, this is Diane Greco-Allen, and today I'm going to talk about something a lot of people are interested in. We're getting more into what's going on genetically with our histories, and how does that look in the world today? And sometimes a lot of moms that are pregnant are really concerned about what's going on with their baby, and you want to know where you came from. And so a lot of my children have been educated on different topics related to biology and medicine. My daughter in nutrition. My son right now is taking biology. And so we started talking about genetics because he wants to go into either human genetics or animal genetics. And so I decided to look at a few of the things that have come about over the centuries in relation to testing at the time of birth. And one of the things that he had mentioned today is PKU. And a lot of people may have been tested at the time of their pregnancies. Anybody probably before 1971, maybe even earlier than that, may not have been tested. So then you're really not knowing, who's a carrier, what's going on later on, and what might be impacting your ability to actually digest your foods. So I just wanted to go over this from the NIC HD site, which is National Institute of Health.gov. And I will put all this information below in my talk. I want to do it briefly because I know that you don't have a lot of time and maybe you don't really want to know all the details. But if you think about some of the things that have developed over centuries and the generations that have brought us here, sometimes you're talking about different areas in the world. You're talking about different mineral distribution, what you were exposed to, what your heritage was like growing up, and the foods that you were, given, and also the sewage and the type of housing and different things like that. There's also that emotional part of things, which might be if there was any trauma in the past. And sometimes that affects your cellular development. But mostly what I'm talking about today is, what can be checked, and then how not to worry, how to find a way to say, okay, we have found this, this genetic disposition, and how to improve or enhance the body's ability to work with that disposition. And mostly through functional nutrition, we work to enable those basic cells and to get them to turn on the right part of the cell to actually support it in a way that is nutritionally stable, and to look at the way that things, what they looked at before, and how you might look at it now from a nutritional standpoint. Okay, so there was a Norwegian doctor in 1934 who discovered PKU. They said it was a rare disease, and if it was left untreated in newborns, caused intellectual disabilities, seizures, and deafness. So when we're talking about different things that might be occurring, something's not working well in the body, and we got to find out what that is and why. So they found out that this inherited disorder resulted in the body's inability to break down, metabolize the amino acid phenylalanine, which is PHE, a common part of many proteins. The extra PHE built up in the body and body tissues and prevented normal brain development, which often resulted in intellectual disabilities. Now, you might see that a lot across the net. We're connecting the mental health world to some things that are going on in the body. And how can we try to get this fine-tuned to help support the mental health part? Okay, so through efforts to understand PKU, Dr. Folling discovered that a certain chemical called phenylpyruvic acid, which was present in the urine of people with untreated PKU, turned green in the presence of another chemical, ferric chloride. So that green, maybe it was an iridescent green, I don't know, it doesn't say. But, you know, when you think about iron, you're thinking about iron binding capacities for hemoglobin, what's going on with your hemoglobin cell. And a lot of people who had Mediterranean anemia and different types of anemia, which is unsupported oxygen being iron and oxygen being carried to the body. So you want to find out more about what was going on. This reaction provided the first test for PKU. Most infants, only a few days old, did not have enough of the chemical in their urine for the test to detect PKU. So although the test was useful for detecting PKU, it was usually too late to prevent damage. So some of these people have, evolved into having these mental health issues because they did not see that this was a relevant matter, or they couldn't detect it. So that there's more to this detection part. And this is about what's going on with the mom's body, what her nutritional status is throughout her pregnancy, and what's going on further down the road. All right, so I wish I could just share this screen and show you, but my camera on my phone is so much better than the camera on my computer. And until I get that fixed, I can't share, but I can share the information. So by 1953, researchers had developed a special low-protein diet for people with PKU that allowed normal development if started right after birth. Now, how many people are put on a low-protein diet? What do you think about the baby, okay, an infant, either nursing, they're getting their nursing milk, or if you're thinking about a baby that's being introduced, the flakes of the rice formulas and all these different types of, you're talking about carbohydrates mostly that are introduced in the beginning for these children. And then they start eliminating things down the road. So you're giving them high carbohydrates very early on. That's something to take into consideration even with PKU. That's something to take into consideration with what we're dealing with childhood diseases. And even further down the road, what happens in the teen years and further on down. And how can we control this? But let's get back to what they said. However, because early detection was not available, most infants and children did not begin their diet in time to prevent the effects. Mass screenings of newborns seemed impossible at the time and too costly and too invasive. Okay, so now we're talking into the early 1960s. I was born during that era of the 1960s. Dr. Robert Guthrie developed a simple, inexpensive blood test that could screen PKU by pricking the infant's heel and getting a drop of blood. Okay, now, what it says here, very interesting, they would drop a little bit of blood on a piece of paper and seeing whether it contained enough PHE to allow a certain kind of bacteria to grow. So if your body's not strong in proteins, there's a good chance, you have a greater chance of developing bacterial infections or the transmission of bacterial infections. Not just bacterial. there's the viruses and the other in the different other types of things. Now, this was a way that they could determine that these children had PKU. This mass screening was safe and effective, and then as a result, in 1963, they started in Massachusetts, became the first state, and then before you know it, they were doing it in all states in the U.S. Soon after, the NICHD led research on the safety and effectiveness of a restricted diet to treat PKU among newborns. Then they did further new screening tests. Okay, so they were supposed to be given a low PHE diet. Okay, the question is, really, was that the proper way to treat this? Now, that by the 1970s, when my sister was born, PKU was commonplace throughout the nation. Upon diagnosis, children were placed on the special diet until at least age 5. How many people were actually diagnosed is the question. Okay, they were placed on this diet, they said, until age 5, which allowed for normal brain development. Now, the brain grows from the back to the front. Frontal lobe is the front of your your front of your head, and that's where the frontal lobe is. A lot of reasoning, rationalizing, making decisions, a lot of that is part of that frontal lobe. And that might be difficult for people who are still growing and developing. All right, so if your brain doesn't normally grow and get to that point at a specific age, you might see processing delays and all kinds of issues that have been developed and created since this problem has not been addressed or even, been made aware. So they started checking more pregnant women, and in 1980, the researchers in Boston demonstrated an association between blood PHE levels during pregnancy and intellectual disability, heart problems, miscarriage, low birth weight, and other problems in children of women with PKU. Now, I was born in the 60s. Was I tested for PKU? Good question. If you were born in the 60s, do you know if you were tested for PKU? Okay, now, what do you do about this? Okay, so PHE restricted diet they evaluated the efficacy of the restrictions with a diet or before pregnancy in reducing the health problems in babies born to mothers with PKU. Finding from this research showed that continuing diet therapy prevented intellectual disability and other health problems. If women continued the special diet therapy just prior to and during pregnancy, it was likely they would deliver healthy babies, free of deficits or other medical problems related. Screening newborn infants for PKU now is required in all states. Okay, so now looking at that PKU part was talking about the breakdown or the metabolizing of the amino acid phenylalanine. Now there's different amino acids that come from our foods and different amino acids that we automatically produce. So when we look at some of these conditions, we're looking at what we bring in normally to eat and what we're also exposed to and what those foods we're exposed to come into the body and how to address that. And to tell you the truth, the best person I would refer some of this information to is a doctor who is a pediatrician in functional medicine, and he is an excellent resource. I'll have the name of his book, and also He wrote the book Metabolical. He's one of them. Lily Nichols, RDN. I love her information. Dr. Mark Hyman. Any of these people, there are so many. There's a vast group of functional medicine faculty members from FMCA and also that work in different areas in the United States and actually all over the world that have honed in on trying to support your body and the metabolic state, getting it more stable, and also supporting our cells at the cellular level. Dr. Terry Walls is also an excellent resource who brought herself back from MS. But you know, when you think about a lot of these different conditions and what's going on in your mitochondria from your mother. Okay, so I was number 4 in my family, and I can look at a number of things that were going on around my birth, and I do know that my mother was not able to breastfeed me. So there were some other factors related to that, and the house that she raised me in, and my brothers and my siblings. So some of these things you have to really think about when it comes into, connecting some of what you're dealing with, what your children are dealing with, if they have a mental health issue or some condition. There's one other condition I want to mention that there's a lot of carriers in the Ashkenazi Jewish descent line that have been connected to, and this is from NCBI, which is National Institute of Health, but they have connected dysautonomia and Tay-Sachs and a number of different issues related around some of these inherited, or the descendants of this inherited group of people, and there's carrier genes and mutations. Now, I won't get into all genetics, but when you start looking at some of these things, there are some common denominators. And when you come down to the basics of the cellular development, mitochondria, and how the baby is born, the placenta, and how structurally intact things are at the time of birth. These are all things to consider, and really comes down to basic nutrition, reverse engineering the diseases, and looking at what we can do at the present moment to help release some of these toxins. Maybe there are extra bacteria in the body, maybe there's some things we want to get them under control, and do as much intervention with nutrition as possible. My name is Diane Greco-Allen. I'm a functional medicine certified health coach. I'm a certified functional nutrition counselor, and I'm also a food relationship coach who battled chronic gastritis, all kinds of digestive disease issues, and also pancreatitis. So I just want to bring some pancreatitis awareness around this conversation, because when you're dealing with a lot of stress in life and mental health is a part of it, you want to be able to understand what you have the power to do for yourself. And self-care is so important, but you got to love yourself first. Diane Greco-Allen, have a wonderful day. Enjoy some bit of nature, whether it's a bird, an animal, looking out at trees, walking in the park, do something, take deep breaths and get the air in and out, and mind yourself. Thank you.